There is a memory that many of us carry, even if we don't have language for it. A sense that life was once gentler. The cooperation came before competition. The learning meant becoming more human, not more efficient. Some of us felt it as children, before the world explained itself to us, before we were taught to rank, perform, harden, or forget. Tonight's guest is someone who never stopped listening to that echo. She writes of worlds where spirit and nature were never separated, where education meant kindness, where prosperity flowed through reciprocity rather than control. And perhaps more importantly, she reminded us that remembering is not nostalgia. It's resistance. It's healing. It's a roadmap home. Welcome to Spirit Talk Show. I'm Doyle. Tonight I'm honored to welcome Katya Batalya, psychotherapist, yoga philosophy and psychology teacher, author, mystic, and voice for soulful transformation. Katya's work lives at the intersection of psychology and remembrance. She draws from Eastern wisdom traditions and Western psychology science, not to escape the modern world, but to rehumanize it. Her writing doesn't argue, it remembers. In her stories, we encounter civilizations rooted in cooperation rather than domination. Children who arrive in the world expecting kindness, and the heartbreak that follows when systems teach them otherwise. Souls who know, deep down, that there must be another way to live. Katya's work invites us to ask uncomfortable questions. Not only what's wrong with us, but about what we may have forgotten. This conversation is not about fixing yourself. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. Well, okay, so your name is pronounced Katya, right? Am I saying it right?
Yes, that's correct.
Because
yes, you are.
I looked up the pronunciation online. Online it said Katya is what it said. Yeah, Katya, but it's Katya, right?
Katya.
Katya, yeah, that sounds like okay.
Right.
So, yeah. Oh, by the way, I'm here with Howie, my co-host. He usually is off camera because you only get to see my face. Luckily for you, so we do just record. We are looking at each other, but the shows are just released as sound. We don't have video, but I'm reading your work and it's fascinating. It makes me. I don't know. When I think about your work, there's a sadness that comes from my childhood because it's a memory of exactly what we knew when we were kids. You know, like I knew when I was very young that my family was, I don't know, they weren't the right family for me, and the stuff I would, so it touched me like deeply, and I carry this sadness because I've always known what I heard, like what was underneath your writing. I notice now this is my take on your writing, that children who arrive in the world expecting kindness and heartbreak follows when like systems teach them like otherwise. So, and I've read that with a recognition than something I'm learning. And I don't know, I held some sadness in that because, I'm curious how, like, have you always known this in your body or like in your being, or was there like a moment in your life that you consciously learned it?
I think deep down I've always known it. It's like, it's as if reality felt something very deep was missing, something essential was missing, and like I was the only one seeing it. Everyone acted normal, thinking that, this is how you live life, and people seemed very focused on themselves and what they wanted for their lives, and with little focus on the collective and each other, and so something about it felt like we're all missing a big thing, and I don't know what.
And it seems so obvious and I don't know if it's people like you or me who I've always thought like deeply about things, and My family just thought I was difficult and maybe even on the spectrum, they would say, because I always thought about things differently. But I knew there was something like even in the way we treat each other in life, like how men tease each other, rather than we would love to build like we'd love to get built up by each other, but men tease each other and put each other down. Why do we do that? Like why do we do something that hurts and not something that builds?
I'm not sure. It's always something that troubled me and gave me so much grief throughout my life,
Yeah.
and that led me to feel different and disconnected from the world.
And,
Mm.
and you started pursuing this Western psychology, like with Eastern traditions. Like, how did that all come into fruition? Like, how did you bring that together?
Yeah, how it came about was that life was pretty hard at one point. I just couldn't see the point in it, and it went downhill from there. There was a lot of alcohol involved, coping
Mm.
mechanisms, and just thinking that maybe life is really not worth it. And I got pretty angry. I started becoming really, really angry at my parents who um, beat me or controlled me, and my school who didn't care about that and was even worse, and my colleagues who I felt disconnected from, and
Mm.
I just started becoming angrier and angrier. And at one point in life, it all crumbled. It just got to a point where I felt, okay, I'm really done here. I've had enough of suffering, and I'm ready to I don't know, for
Yeah.
something to happen or to move on. And at that point, yoga came into my life, and I went to this school a bit randomly. Now I understand it's more of a synchronistic
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of magic. At the time, it just felt like something random happening. And I found myself in this yoga school, and they started teaching about the laws of the universe. They started teaching about karma and how when you put an energy out there, it comes back to you in a different form
Hmm.
or at a different time. And they started talking about how there's a spiritual layer behind it all, how we can learn from the traumas and the challenges of our lives
Hmm.
and change ourselves to become the best version of ourselves, and that there is something deeper, there is a soul that we can connect with, and that we can be aligned in what we believe. There's hundreds, probably thousands of teachings in yoga and the yoga philosophy, and I joined an ashram where we were all living this same philosophy. We had the same beliefs, and I finally felt, I think, connected after all that. And I started exploring that, and I started healing from a lot of trauma that I had, and I started doing all the practices, but also living the philosophies of how to live a more peaceful, harmonious, joyful, fulfilling life. And it did indeed become that. And then I started teaching yoga and started seeing the same changes in my students. And eventually I really realized this is really what's giving meaning to my life, and I feel fulfilled in a way that I never felt before. And because of that, I thought, well, I need to make this my life, and I changed my career and started studying psychotherapy.
Hmm.
And as a psychotherapist, I bring in those teachings because psychotherapy, my experience has been it's great in the on the emotional side,
Hmm.
healing from traumas and from emotions and what's happening with us. But in my experience, yoga just goes a bit, or can go a bit deeper in the different dimensions of healing. So, including the body, including the energy, looking at our environment, looking at the land around us. What impact is it having on us?
Yeah.
Do we live in a city? Do we live in around some toxic people or toxic influences? What do we put in our body? What's the influence of our ancestors, and our lineage? So do we connect spiritually to ourselves, to our soul, or whatever we like to call that, to the divine? Or maybe there's a better word for that, but are we connected or disconnected? So all these dimensions started to, I brought those into my psychotherapy practice, and so these days I combine them both for healing and for just living a richer life.
So you spoke of lineage, and I grew up in Ireland. That's where I grew up, and it seems like there's a way people behave there is quite different, and the way that they hold, like some sadness and some anger and some despair. And your accent, I'm hearing, it kind of goes between maybe New Zealand and some other country that might be like Russian or something. What am I hearing?
I guess it's a bit of everything. I live in New Zealand.
Yeah.
I've been living here for almost 15 years,
Okay.
something. And I learned English in the States, and then there's a bit of I've spent some time in the UK, so it's all
Okay.
over the place, really.
Well, me too. I grew up in Ireland. I've been here in the States for 30 years. But so let me ask you, from your perspective as a psychotherapist, how long does prolonged exposure to the competitive system, like what does prolonged exposure do to the nervous system and the soul? I mean,
it's a huge impact. It has a deep impact on our nervous system, and I don't think that a lot of people really realize that. So let's say this, for example, you see a lion. In that moment, your body produces adrenaline, right?
yeah.
Because you need to wake up in that moment and get out of there as soon as possible. As soon as the lion situation is over, then the adrenaline just leaves the body. It's almost immediate, and you're back to normal. Now, when you are suffering from prolonged exposure to stress, that creates cortisol. And cortisol, unlike adrenaline, takes a very long time to leave the body. And it takes a very nourishing environment, physically, emotionally, etc., to actually bring your body back to a calm position. And a lot of people don't even understand or have any idea about what it means to really feel calm. And I think I didn't either. First of all, because we have all these egos that are ruling our lives. When we live our life in that way, that is or scared or ambitious or angry, whatever is that ego that's happening, or probably many of them, they keep disrupting our peace. So emotionally we're in turmoil because as we've seen, people do treat each other in a way that's, it can be mean, it can be selfish, and all the rest. So our egos, if we don't do this work of personal development to become more grounded in a reality that's outside of ego, and that's rooted in peace and calmness and love and compassion and the values of our soul, then we will just continue to disrupt our own system. So, and that's just emotionally, Also, if we don't heal from past traumas, the same thing is going to happen, because we might push them down, and many people do. Almost every other day I have a new client that has had for a long time the strategy of, I'll just pretend it hasn't happened and push it down,
Yeah, yeah.
But the thing is, it doesn't really work with trauma, because we push it down and it goes towards, I describe it as a bubble, a trauma bubble, that we think just stays in our subconscious, or it doesn't bother us, but it does. And it pulls the strings, and it pulls the strings unconsciously, because it needs love, and it needs support, or whatever it needs. It's pulling the strings without us really knowing. So all these things are pulling the strings emotionally, and then we've got the environment itself, so the land, the influence of the land. People who live in a city, they often can't tell the impact that that's having in their body. The amount of energies that's there, the amount of noise, of pollution, of light, of stimulation, keeps our system on alert. And I'm not saying don't live in cities, though I do live on an island in New Zealand, but it's okay to live in cities, but we do need to also mindfully compensate for that, and do maybe some practices that bring us back into that parasympathetic part of the nervous system, the relaxation part, so that at least we keep coming back to that place of grounding and calmness.
So is healing, in your view, more about changing behavior or about remembering, like what it is, the essence of what you really were at the beginning?
Yes, and then there's that. So it's, I think they go together, right? Once I started, actually, when I first got into that yoga school, I thought I didn't even know if I would learn anything. And as soon as the teacher started talking, I recognized what he was saying. And I hadn't learned that in this lifetime, but I just knew what he was going to say. And it was a remembrance. And it just felt like this deep wisdom about who we truly are. Mm. And I knew it would change my life. I just didn't know how much. And so, yes, being in finding a way that doesn't have to be yoga. There's so many traditions out there. Yeah. But that one thing or things that help us remember who we are, what are the values of our soul, what we're about. And doing that, I call that the light work. There's the shadow work, which is working on the egos and the traumas, etc. And then there's the light work. And if you don't do enough of the light work, with those practices, or even just having that intention or following our inspiration, because often the things that inspire us are things that are soul related and have something in it for us to awaken our potential. And if we're not doing that work, even if we go to a therapist and discuss our problems, sometimes that can even be harmful, because we just increase our resonance with those problems. We enter that vibration of anger or fear or whatever it is, and then it just becomes more disruptive to the nervous system. Wow, yeah.
So I can't help thinking, like, I spoke to another guest, and when I speak to you, I'm getting the same feeling at some core of rightness. I don't know how to say it correctly, but there's some peace in my center saying, this is a message that's so important and I need to hear it. And I want to get you in touch with this guest. Her name is Roz Place. And unfortunately, she's my only episode in 3 years that got corrupted. So I'm not going to be able to present the episode, but you and her share very similar philosophies. She does this therapy work with guardian angels and stuff like that. And yeah, and it just has this core of, okay, this is such an important message, and I've needed to hear it. And thank you for that, because it feels right.
Pleasure. And there's a passage I could read from my book that I think represents that. Some people call it the new earth, but I think it's almost the old earth. Yeah. That place that we remember sometimes, but we start to forget.
So is that one of the
that passage eventually?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that one of the excerpts you sent me? So would you like to read one of them now? You want to go ahead and read one of them, the excerpts?
Yeah, could do.
Please, let's do it.
Okay. So pull that one up. Okay.
We're doing excerpt 1 or 2.
I guess 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have it on the screen if you want me to present the screen to you. But if you have it
no, it's okay. I've got it here. I've got it here. So, here we go. There was once a perfectly harmonious civilization where spirit and nature were one. In this distant world, beings lived in a sacred rhythm with existence. It was a time when separation hadn't yet crept into consciousness, and unity was not an ideal but a lived experience. The veil between the visible and the invisible was thin, and all species, human and non-human alike, coexisted in respectful alliance, each recognizing the value, wisdom, and contribution of the other. Society thrived not through dominance or accumulation, but through deep cooperation. The needs of the collective and the fulfillment of the individual were not in conflict. In fact, they nourished one another. People were deeply connected to their inner callings, and from that inner clarity emerged creative expressions that benefited all. Each person was seen and celebrated as a unique constellation of gifts, sensitivities, and preferences. Rather than being compared or molded into sameness, they were lovingly guided to discover the roles in which their essence could flourish. They were not defined by productivity, but by authenticity. Work was not a burden, but an inspired offering. Projects were chosen for their beauty, meaning, and the joy they brought. Communities gathered to co-create art, medicine, music, stories, and technologies that enhanced life's wonder and harmony. These were not mere tools of utility, but expressions of gratitude and reverence for existence. Humans lived with open hearts, moving through their days with kindness and generosity. Their relationships were sacred explorations. They cherished the many layers of union, physical, energetic, emotional, mental, and spiritual, not as possessive bonds, but as mirrors in which the divine could reflect itself. Love was free and abundant, not bound by fear or control. Freedom was not the right to do as one wished, but the graceful ability to be in full presence with one's nature and to act in ways that served life. Joy arose not from indulgence, but from belonging. Beauty flourished not as an ornament, but as an expression of truth. Prosperity in this world was not measured in currency or conquest. It was understood as a flow of energy, creative, natural, and interspecies. All beings offered their abundance willingly. Birds shared songs that healed. Trees gave fruit and insight. Rivers offered their flow as teaching. Reciprocity was not enforced by law, but guided by the heart's intelligence. Life was not merely about surviving or achieving. It was a dance between the finite and the infinite. People were deeply present with the changing circumstances of their earthly lives, yet simultaneously rooted in their immortal spirit. They remembered who they truly were, eternal sparks of the great mystery. They consulted this cosmic intelligence, often gathering in quiet communion to ask for guidance, healing, or vision. It was not a distant deity they called upon, but a living presence within and around all things. They knew Spirit as Father, guiding, protecting, and uplifting. They knew nature as Mother, nurturing, holding, and recharging. The earth was not a resource, but a living being to be revered. Her animals, plants, winds, and waters were kin. Her cycles were the rhythms by which they lived. Ceremonies, songs, and sacred stories were woven into everyday life to honor her presence. These humans walked in remembrance of their ancestors, not as burdens from the past, but as luminous mentors. The wisdom passed down was not static tradition, but living essence, evolving with each generation. Through this reverence, they continued the ancestral task of shaping a civilization that supported the flourishing of all species. It was a society where magic, science, and philosophy were not divided but interwoven, multiple faces of the same quest for truth. They understood the subtle laws of energy and matter, the alchemy of mind and heart, the spiral logic of dreams, and the sacred geometry of life itself. And so, in this golden civilization, all beings, whether feathered or scaled, human or elemental, visible or hidden, lived happy and free. Spirit smiled through every pair of eyes, and nature sang through every breeze.
Wow. It seems so true, and it seems like, and it also the sadness, and like we need to get there. That this is where we need to be, and this is where we belong, and we just seem so far from it sometimes, and that makes me a little sad. But also, it's really cool to hear a message that seems so true, and so that's uplifting. Thank you for that. Wow.
Yeah, pleasure. That I think for a long time I found that very sad. This difference between the reality I hold in my heart or remember in my soul and what is lived on a day-to-day basis. It was very painful for a very long time, and the grief of that almost destroyed me. But I've come to a different place now where I can appreciate the journey, and I can understand, I think, the end. We'll go back to that place eventually. But for now, how meaningful is it that through our own transformation, having been dealt these cards, which have been so challenging for many, how can we grow into our highest potential and contribute towards a society that is like that again?
The question is to you: how can we, and what can we? Because I know we could redesign the education system. I'm a teacher, is what I do during the day, and there's lots of issues in the education system and the way we. How would you redesign education from the ground up if you could?
See, I think education is a big part of that for sure. But let me just give you what I believe is the central concept. So we've moved into the Aquarian age. Have you heard about this before? This idea of the Aquarian age?
Well, I mean, I've heard of Aquarius, but I don't think I've heard of the ages of Aquarius. I mean,
Okay.
I've heard the song, but I mean, but I don't know if that's related to the actual age of Aquarius.
Okay, so the age of Aquarius is we've moved from an age where we had one person ruling many, whether that's a spiritual leader, whether that's a politician, whether someone who tells many people what to do, and they have to know something because then they order people to put that in place. And in the Aquarian age, it doesn't work like that anymore. So in the Aquarian age, in a way, we're all fish in that aquarium, and the wisdom is inside each of us. So each of us comes with certain gifts in us. And when we really shine in those gifts, we awaken those gifts in others as well. We inspire others just through being who we are. So the work becomes then to awaken and to become the best version of ourselves, to move towards peace and compassion and love and kindness and all those values, whatever values, for some people it's more humor and fun and creativity, and others are inspiring, in their roles and professions. But each of us comes with a set of gifts, and when we awaken those, we shine that into the world, and we light up other people's sparks. And this is how we awaken together. And so to bring that back to education, I think what we need to learn in our education is personal development. more important than anything else, because we need to learn how to be the best version of ourselves in relationships, in our emotional states, in to be mindful of the energy that we bring into the world, to be mindful of karma, and what happens if we create suffering for one another. All those fundamental teachings. And how do you move from oppression to freedom? How do you move from hatred to love? From vengeance to forgiveness. How do you move? That's, I think, what we need in our education system, so that each of us is then doing that work and awakening our potential. Then the rest takes care of itself.
Reminds me a little bit of, what's that school system that Norman's involved in?
Montessori?
No, it's not Montessori. It sounds a little bit like Montessori. There's another one type of educational system which is about the whole self and becoming a part of
Steiner?
Yeah, yes, and honoring the whole self and honoring the children, honoring their unique gifts and stuff, and like cultivating that. So, if you'll indulge us, we do this funny thing on our show where you get to listen to us read a tribute story. So what we did was we researched you, we looked you up online, we found some writings that you did, we found some things that you posted. I'm sorry, this sounds really stalkery, but we were researching for the show, and we create a tribute story about you, and we write the story, but then it is put together by AI at the end. So if you'd indulge us, we'd like to have the velvet voice of Howie here. Would like to read it to you if you didn't. So, okay. So,
sure. Yeah.
So
okay.
Here it is.
There was a child who arrived holding a map no one else could see. It wasn't drawn on paper. It lived in her body, in how she noticed when people were unkind, in how noise felt louder than it should, in how injustice landed like a physical ache in her chest. She entered school believing learning meant becoming more connected. Instead, she found a world that rewarded separation. She watched kindness become a liability. Curiosity became competition, and wonder slowly replaced with performance. The adults told her this was reality, but something in her refused the lesson. Years passed. The child grew. The ache remained, but it softened into listening. She listened to the wisdom carried in breath and body, to stories older than language, to teachings that spoke of wholeness rather than hierarchy. She studied the mind not to dominate it, but to understand its wounds. She studied spirit, not to escape the world, but to return it with open eyes. And one day she realized the map she carried had never been wrong. It was simply waiting for the courage to be lived, waiting for language, waiting for others who felt the same quiet grief and the same quiet hope. Now she writes not to convince, but to remember with us. She teaches not to instruct, but to guide. She heals not by fixing, but by reuniting what was never meant to be divided. Her work is an offering, a reminder that another way of being human has always existed, that the echoes we feel are not fantasies, and that remembering together may be the most revolutionary act of all.
Okay.
Wow.
What do you think?
Remembering together might be the most revolutionary act of all. I love that.
That's important, and I think we can remember together because we all know the truth deep inside our core, right? And it takes a while. Some of us have pretty hard, like childhoods where we're told to that we're wrong, we should shut up, and there's something wrong with the way we think and wrong with the way we talk. Because I had a stutter when I was a kid, so you're told everything is wrong, and that it's hard to get past that, right? It takes a lot of strength and a lot of and I think it's the most important work you're doing. So you are a psychotherapist. Do you actually do you have clients you work with one-on-one? Do you do that type of thing?
Yes, that is my job, yes.
Okay, so you actually, and this is based on your philosophy. Let's talk about, we've read your excerpt, so that's from your book. So let's give it the title of your book and where people can get it.
Yes, it's called Echoes of the Timeless, and it's pretty much everywhere. Amazon, Kobo, Apple Books, Audible, the lot.
And your website is justyourname.com, right, or .org?
Yeah, katiabatalha.org, yeah.
Battaglia. Hey, I pronounced it right, Howie.
You sure did.
Good job.
Before you came on, we recorded an introduction, and he thought I said your name wrong the whole time. So he doesn't trust me. But to be fair to him, I did look up the pronunciation online, and the pronunciation is different from how you pronounce it. So the internet did not know how to pronounce your name correctly. So
I appreciate that you had all that care to actually go and look that up. That's unusual.
well, I know that I sometimes there's some gap in my learning as a kid with my phonetic pronunciation. So sometimes I can't sound out a word quickly, so I have to take time to, if I really want to, if it's important to me to say it right, I do a little bit of work to make sure I can pronounce it. So,
But see that right there. See, this is the gift. Like that you went through a challenge and you had that trouble as a kid that you didn't pronounce maybe in the right way. It was harder for you than for other kids. And then you've grown into someone that's actually doing something that I don't think anyone else. I've been to a number of podcasts lately because I'm doing a podcast tour. No one else has told me that they've done that, you know? So now you're shining that light, and that's inspiring. That's the journey. We wouldn't be able to do that if everyone was enlightened already, you know?
Well, thank you I want to be the person who does that. I want to be the person who steps up and does that. And in every organization I'm involved in, I'm known as the person who will always do the find the special and the thing I can step up for. That's beyond the normal, right? And because it's important. It's important because I grew up in Ireland, and it's very kind of surfacey. It felt like, nobody didn't feel like anybody really cared, and I want to be someone who cares to my sons and like to the world. And I got two beautiful boys. They're unique in the way that they see the world and treat people, and they're adored by lots because they really see people and they really connect with people. And my youngest son is like going to be president of the United States because the way he works a room, so he's so likable. Everybody just likes him, and because he connects with people a little bit more. Yeah, my name pronunciation. I had a funny situation one time where they had me read the names at graduation, and I think I got through 3 names before the principal came and knocked me off the stage and started pronouncing it. Name pronunciation was not my. So you do have another excerpt, and I love the way you read the first one. Are you willing to read a second one?
Yeah, sure. So the second one, way more depressing than the first one. But, it's, it's from the challenges that the beauty arises. So, it's in that context. Okay, here's the second one. On Sophia's first day of school, she was extremely excited to get to know other children and connect with them. She imagined everyone learning new activities, helping others, sharing materials, bonding over lived experiences, just discovering the world together. Her fellow students' successes would be her successes, and from anyone's failures, they would all learn and support one another. If anyone were lonely, the others would be there to keep them company. If one of the kids didn't have a pencil or a book, they could borrow from someone who did. If they had trouble understanding a lesson, others more knowledgeable on that topic would offer to study together. And whenever anyone needed comfort, their classmates would provide a warm smile and a loving hug. Sophia felt ecstatic about entering that new world she'd fantasized about for such a long time as a lonely child. Until that day arrived, Sophia could not have imagined that children could be competitive, that there would be quests for power over others, that they could be selfish, inconsiderate, or greedy. that the happiness of the collective didn't matter to most individuals. She couldn't have conceived that some people would be happy to have too many clothes while others didn't have enough, or enjoy an abundance of food while others starved. She couldn't have anticipated that some people could lie and manipulate others to get what they wanted, or push them down so they could come out on top. And in her wildest dreams, she could not have predicted that people could reject each other for being different, dim themselves in order to fit in, or be forced to do what was expected rather than encouraged to discover who they wanted to be. I I think that's maybe enough for now, but
Okay.
yes, it does talk a bit more. Let me just share this little bit that comes after. More shockingly, all of that individualistic behavior was supported by their educational system, which not only encouraged competitiveness, but also only taught disciplines like mathematics and science, while failing to impart sound moral values and cultivate interpersonal skills. Sophia simply did not have a framework to understand how her teachers believed that adding and subtracting numbers was more important than being kind to their peers. She soon realized that school was not going to be an exciting exploration of what it means to be a human being, but rather a predefined journey that others had already laid out according to their questionable priorities.
It makes me think of two things, and one makes me profoundly sad, and one makes me kind of happy as I think of my youngest son going to school, and that the first day of school, he was so excited to go to school. And then within a week of school, it was obvious that he didn't like school. And I was like, you've been in kindergarten for 1 week and you already are not liking it. And they they fall into this mode of, okay, this is my existence and I got to go through the systems, right? And I would love to take him and go to a private school and find a different school or homeschool. But, I'm divorced and, it's hard to make those decisions when you're the only one who wants it, right? And it also makes me think of when I was a math teacher in middle school, I would always say to the kids, you guys love being loved and built up and being considered and being heard. So why can't you be that person for each other? Because then you put each other down and you're mean to each other and then you say nasty things that you would hate to hear to you, and it's a long way of saying, like, do unto others as you want to do to you, but trying to present it in a way like, you guys love when people love you and build you up. So be the builder up, be that person. Don't be the, and my classroom was always a place that you had to be, it was safe to build, for people to build you up. I didn't have to, because, I remember in school being singled out by the teachers frequently. And so I never do any calling out or singling out or anything like that. I just want kids to do it their way. And I've been pretty successful, but I would love if this is something that could get into mainstream thought. It's important work. It's important work. What if somebody right now, if you knew someone who came to you and they were just angry at the world and got to that deep dark place that you've been, and I've been there too, about 5 years ago, that deep place, like, I think this is my last night on earth kind of place. And what's the first thing we need to say to them? What's the first place that people are in that depth?
Well, even just listening to their story is very important. But assuming we've done that, I think one thing that I do pretty early on is to contextualize that within their soul's journey, within their life's journey, let's say. So much like what happened right here in this session with you, Doyle, that you had challenges with pronunciation and then you've evolved into someone who's just so considerate of others and is actually showing that and known for that. I try to look at someone's challenges and see, okay, what does this build up to? Why are you suffering this particular kind of trauma, and how is it shaping you? And maybe it's shaping you into very empathetic, kind-hearted, good person, who can hold others in their suffering, or maybe it's shaping you up to be someone who's a better leader because they've been so oppressed. So I think that our traumas are the pieces of a puzzle that illustrates our soul's journey. And why did we need those traumas in particular? Why did we need to run into those people who did those things to us in particular? Because there'll be trends. And I think if any of us looks back at our past, we can see, okay, I have always been treated this way. I've been almost attracting this particular pattern into my life repeatedly. And that tells me something. It shows a story. And we start to build the puzzle, because when you understand what the puzzle looks like, then the journey has been worth it. It's just when you think that there's just tragedies in your life that you just want to quit. But if you really understand that those tragedies amount to something, and my experience is they always do, and it belongs to your soul journey, and for you to awaken certain abilities or gifts in life, then you understand why you had to suffer so much. And the people who, there's this theory that says that we've chosen our suffering. We've chosen if we want to come into this life and suffer that much, or just suffer a little bit. And my experience is the people who have suffered a terrible amount, they have also created that much depth within themselves, and they have that much potential as well. Not that other people don't have potential. Everyone has potential, but there's a different kind of potential that you unlock through those deep experiences.
Wow, you must be a gift to the people who have the pleasure to have you as a therapist, and that's amazing. Do you see people just locally, or do you have an online presence all over the?
I only see people online, and I just help people remember what they already know. I don't do much.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for the work you do. I mean, I could talk to you for hours. Unfortunately, they do kick me out of the studio at the same time. So let me do a closing. I have a little. I usually like to make a closing statement, and then I'll give you time to talk, to respond to it, or say something at the end, and then we'll say goodnight. Okay. So I'm talking to that. So if something in a story stirred in you, if it felt familiar in a way you couldn't quite name, pause with that. You don't need to rush to fix it or turn it into action right away. Let it be a remembering. If you'd like to explore these ideas deeply through writings, teachings, or offerings rooted in integration, compassion, and soulful living, you can find Katya Batalya's work at her website, which is katyabatalya.org. That's CATIABATALHA.org. Her courses, her books, and resources are invitations not to become someone new, but to return to what you may have always known. And if you're listening and thinking, I thought it was just me, know this, it never was. Please stay with us. There are more stories to remember. So, Katya, you can have the last statement.
Thank you. That is such a touching statement. Yeah, and I do hope that everyone remembers more and more about who they are and where they came from and why they're here. So much love to everyone. Thank you so much for this beautiful conversation.
Thank you. This was one of the special ones. Thank you. Say goodnight, Howie.
Good night, Katya. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Yeah, like how he talks so much tonight, didn't he? He never stopped blabbing. I'm the one who didn't stop talking. So. But thank you so much. It was a pleasure, and I'll be in touch with you with the next steps.
Pleasure. Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah, have a beautiful evening. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for spending time with us. Now go make a story worth telling.